This is the Bowmore 10-year-old, and it is supposed to be dark and intense. Let's see how good it is in this week's review. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the whiskey nerd, and like I said, this is the Bowmore 10-year-old, dark and intense. So let me get it into the glass, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Now, first off, this is one of my last of these kind of 200ml bottles of Scotch. If you're following the channel, one of my friends got me a bunch of these kind of smaller 200ml bottles to try out different whiskey from different regions in Scotland to see what kind of profiles I like. And this one here is from Islay, and actually if you see my little map of Ireland, Islay is right up there at the top, and it's generally known as like the smoky Scottish region. Now, it's not guaranteed that it'll be a smoky whiskey. I know that some whiskies produced on the island of Islay they're not peated, they're unpeated, and they just come through with that kind of minerality note because it is on that island right off in the sea. So, but this one here, I understand, is quite peaty, it is quite smoky. It's not the smokiest and darkest of those Scottish whiskies that they will be coming out of the island of Islay, but it is on that region of, you know, it's in the smoky, it's in that peated area. I understand that this dark and intense 10-year-old is maybe originally a travel exclusive, or maybe during COVID it was no longer a travel exclusive, because I think I've seen it elsewhere. But if you know if it's travel exclusive still, or if it's just gotten a wider release, let me know. It does say that it was aged in, I think it's sherry casks and hogsheads. It doesn't mention anything about the vanilla, any bourbon aging. So it doesn't mention anything about it having been originally aged in bourbon casks, just those sherry casks and hogsheads. So hogsheads are just a different type of cask. They're like, I think, a bigger sherry hogshead. I think it's certain types of sherry are matured in the smaller casks. Some are in butts, some are in tons, some are in blood tons, and some are in hogsheads. So it's just, I think, a different types of sherry. That's all it's saying here. So it's just a sherry aged whiskey, 10-year-old, coming in at 40%. I don't think it says if it was, it does have caramel color, because I can see on the back there it's got mid-Farbstoff, which means like with an addition, it's in German. So it does have an addition of probably caramel coloring in there because it is quite dark. But again, being aged in sherry casks, probably does have some natural color, but they just probably made it a bit more intense, more dark and intense. Bowmore are the oldest distillery on the island of Islay. I think they were established in 1779. It probably says it, established 1779, says it there. They're the oldest distillery on the island of Islay, but they're now part of the Beam Suntory family. So that's this kind of massive international conglomerate of whiskey kind of brands, and they now own the Bowmore distillery, and that's about all I know about it. So I'm just going to go in for the nose on the Bowmore Dark and Intense. Let's see how it is. Cheers. Okay, I am an Irish whiskey drinker. I'm an Irish whiskey kind of nerd as it is, and so for me this is peaty. This is quite peaty. It's not like super peaty. I've definitely had stronger, even Irish peated whiskies, stronger than this, but the peat is very apparent immediately coming out of the glass. It's got this almost like floral peat, like it's like if you're from a country that produces peat, that produces turf, when that turf sod has been cut, I'll see if I can put a picture of it up there, because it's not always dry, it's quite wet, it's quite like earthy, and that's the kind of flavor or nose I'm getting here. Like, it's almost like that more natural, more kind of earthy peat, that floral, herbal kind of peat coming through here. But that's not like all there is coming through. Obviously on the nose it's quite sweet. There's a lot of like sherry influence coming through there. Like, I'm not really getting a huge amount of nuttiness, but there's a little bit of like orange citrus coming through, like a touch of oak, but not really a huge amount. More in that sweetness, like a brown sugar, like a maple syrup actually, yeah. Quite like maple syrup, where it's got this kind of sugary, syrupy thickness to it. That peat is there. There's almost a little bit of salt in there, like almost getting like a salted caramel, that kind of vibe here, where it's sweet with a little bit of iodine, a little bit of salt, almost, because again it is an Islay whiskey, so those whiskeys, the way they're aged, they're exposed to the sea air, so you get a lot of salty influence to it, and so that's kind of what I'm getting here, almost like a salted caramel note on the nose, and with that bit of orange, that's all sitting on top of that kind of base of earthy peat. So I'm going to go in again, but I'm going to focus on the palate and see how it is. Cheers. So I've had this before, I've tried it before, I did the review, and I was struck with this weird note of like I don't know, weird. it's a little bit weird. It's like on the nose it's quite sweet, it's quite like inviting almost. On the palate, that peaty note is a little bit off to me. It's like a little bit, it's like a charred or dark. It's got like that iodine, like almost like a rubber, like a burnt rubber smell or burnt rubber taste coming through. And it's here now again on that second, on my second time trying now. It's got that bit weird. It's still got like sweetness behind it there. It's still got like that sherry influence. It's still got stuff like that coming through. A bit of like that salty minerality there as well. But yeah, got a bit of a weird peat note. But so I'm gonna go in again. Gonna see if I can get past that and see what else I can find. Cheers. Okay, second sip round. Had a bit of I let it sit there for a bit. Like I did get a bit of red fruits, almost like dried raisins. That bit of sherry influence is coming through. In terms of sweetness, got a little bit of like almost like vanilla buttercream, like frosting, like, but it's that vanilla buttercream where it's quite sweet. Got a little bit of like that oaky vanilla influence, but it's like almost artificially sweet. It wasn't super appealing. It wasn't like a vanilla buttercream, or that was almost like that store-bought, you know, artificial, like the Betty Crocker style vanilla frosting coming through. Maybe it's just that weird iodine peat note. It's just kind of influencing everything. I don't want to be focusing on that note, but for me, that's definitely the strongest note here on the palate. Like there's a bit of orange citrus, but again, it's just taken off in a bit of a weird direction by that peaty note. And maybe you'll let me know if that's kind of emblematic of all Islay whiskies. Maybe that combination of peat smoke and that salty seawater, sea air influence, maybe that's what I'm getting here. Maybe that's just what that style of whiskey is going to be like, and maybe it's not something I should be looking for. So if you do know, or if it's just a weird one here from Bowmore, let me know down below. But I'm going to go in again, focus on the finish. Cheers. Okay, so on the finish, like the mouthfeel is quite light. It's quite a thin mouthfeel. Again, like I said, it is coming in at 40% ABV, so it's going to be quite light. As I swallowed it, I got a little bit of oak spice, like almost oak and black pepper, a little bit of that, like just spiked up and then immediately went down. Finished it quite short, a little bit of sweetness, almost like, again, imagine that, like that herbal note from the nose coming back a little bit, but almost more like in a medicinal note, right? Like still with that, again, that weird, almost burnt rubber kind of iodine taste, but with a little bit of medicinal note at the end. And again, a bit of roundness, bit of sweetness, bit of that maple syrup from the sherry, but quite light, fading off pretty quickly on the finish. Before I give my final thoughts on this whiskey, but you probably have a good idea already now, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey reviews like this every Wednesday, and I put out cocktail recipes featuring whiskey every Friday, but I won't be having a cocktail featuring this whiskey this Friday. I'll be using a different Scotch whiskey because for me, to my money, this isn't the kind of whiskey I like. Now, I've tried a couple of Scotch whiskies, and based on recommendations from you folks, I've gotten whiskies from like the Glenallachie distillery, and I really like those, and they will be reviewed, and those reviews will be coming out in the next few weeks. So if maybe you know of other peated Scotch whiskies or other Islay distilleries that I should try out, let me know, because again, I've been sleeping on Scotch. I've been kind of sitting back, focusing on the Irish whiskies, and I want to try more, you know, Scottish whiskies, especially since, as you can see, it's just across the water there. So I want to know more about the kind of whiskies they make, and whiskies that are good from that area, not just ones that are just kind of findable anywhere or easy to find, you know, not those kind of basic ones that are a bit more interesting, a bit more fun. So if you got any good ideas of peated or heavily peated Scotch whiskies I should try, let me know. Me though, I poured it, so I'm gonna drink it. I might not enjoy it as much as other whiskies. I might have to get myself an Irish whiskey after this, but I will see you next time. Slán.